I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll take the roll call, please.
Chairwoman Hillary Chambers.
Present.
Vice Chairperson Abdul Haddis.
Present.
Dr. Curtis Ivory is excused absent. Mr. Royce Manico.
Here.
Mr. Brett Razigan is excused absent. Mr. John Paul Rea.
Present.
Ms. Vicky Wolber.
She's delayed in traffic, but she is on her way, a few minutes out.
Thank you.
Take a motion to adopt the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented, Madam Chair.
I'll support it.
It's been moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is adopted. Ms. Martin, the certification of public notice.
SMART will hold the July 27, 2023 Board of Directors meeting at 2 p.m. in SMART's boardroom located on the 6th floor of the Buell Building, 535 Griswold Street, Detroit, Michigan, 48226. This meeting is open to the public.
Thank you. Take a motion to approve the minutes from the board meeting for June 22nd, 2023.
So moved, Madam Chair. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. We'll move on to public participation. Are there members of the public that would like to participate?
Please come to the podium. The first person in the first seat, state your name and county for the record, please. You have 3 minutes to speak, sir.
Okay, Stephen Haring, Wayne County, and now I have so much to say, but I just want to say is, the current wage that drivers are getting paid, and you're going to hear a lot of this today, it's just deplorable. I mean, I've been taking the bus for 10 years. I've talked with drivers. I've heard what they went through. Bus drivers were in the top 10. They were behind medical workers and workers that died during COVID, And also, it's not only that, but another big problem we're having, buses are late. I'm seeing, for example, maybe a 462 doesn't show up, but then you'll see 2 461s, and then 2 hours later, a 460. People rely on these buses. You might see a bus with one person on it, but that one person might be the head custodian for a school that has 1,000 to 2,000 people. This problem with SMART is, I just feel like, and the one thing that I'm just so infuriated with, that's just, in my opinion, extremely undemocratic, is how are they not working without a contract? I mean, that just makes no sense at all. I mean, these drivers are some of the most important, essential employees, in my opinion, the country. And for them to be treated like this, underpaid, it's just deplorable. And, and I also want to say is, have any of the board members even taken the bus? I mean, have any taken the bus here? Because I think it would be a good idea for maybe one day, all of you, to maybe try taking the bus. I mean, the ones that may live out in North Oakland or North Macomb, go park in the Gratiot or Woodward lot and take the bus and just see how bad the service is and what these drivers are going through, because this is just, so me and a group of people, we had a protest over by the Rosa Parks Transit Center with over, I believe it was 50 people. And, drivers in Ann Arbor, in Chicago, they start at $28 an hour. And I know I'm reading these, these ads for Smart Bus driver fare. Well, the problem is once they get their CDL, they're going to go right to Ann Arbor, Toledo, or a system that's a drivable distance that pays an actual fair wage. So, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Himmeltree. Who would like to speak next? Harway. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Harway.
Hello. For the record, my name is Megan Owens. I'm the Director of Transportation Riders United. As most of you know, TRU's been working for over 20 years because we believe everyone should be able to get where they need to go, regardless of whether they drive. And for a long time, we could count on SMART. It may not be the most frequent service. It may not get everywhere, but you could count on it to be there when you said. And that was what SMART was always known for. Unfortunately, that has changed. I know, well, I've shared before you and had emailed out to many of you before on a report that we released today saying save our service. It provides a lot of details behind the concerns that many people have about the scarcity and infrequency of buses, about the number of buses that are not showing up when they are scheduled to, and the real life impact that is having on thousands of people. I overheard someone getting fired, losing their job, waiting 45 minutes for a bus that didn't show. They called their boss 3 different times while waiting. And the 3rd time the boss said, don't bother to come in. That is the real life impact. That is why it may feel like we're nagging you, we're bugging you, we're being a big hassle, but this is a huge crisis, and we are not seeing the level of urgency from this board and from this management that would really appropriately address the uncompetitive pay. I know you've been trying hard. I appreciate the additional events that you've been doing to immediately hire new drivers, but whatever you've been trying hasn't been enough. So please recognize we are all here because we love this service. We know how critically important it is to tens of thousands of people across the region and the millions of us who depend on them. So please do more to restore the service as fast as you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Owens.
I'm Sherry Wells from Oakland County. And this morning I met another Ferndale person who was coming for this rally today. She and I both individually learned a long time ago that if we have a place to be at a certain time, we look at what bus would get us there on time and take the one before that to make sure that even if the one before that doesn't show up, we've got another good chance of getting a bus that will get us there. That's not good. On the bus, and I was very gratified because 2 men on that bus were taking the bus to the ball game today. And what I've been working for is to get the people who've been complaining, to put it nicely, about paying taxes for the bus on the bus, because it's for everyone, not just old people, disabled people, or students. Before COVID, I was on the bus and talking with a young man in the seat in front of me. He said he was taking the training from DOT to learn how to drive a bus, and then he was going to move to Atlanta for better pay. That's sad.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Before the next person goes to the microphone, I do want to encourage, and I'm so happy to see such full participation here. I do want to encourage, and I know that I've said this in the past, that everyone who speaks at public comment and beyond does stay for the update that the board is going to receive today, because we will receive updates on staffing efforts. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Mike Rayner, Chesterfield Township. I know you've seen and heard from me before, and I really have nothing new to comment on. Disappointing from my very first picture, comment, presentation. Reminded me with the poster here, I had all my pictures and I was ready to really make some progress here. Came in numerous other times, reinforcing various things. Sent letters, emails. I've done everything I can to get some responses. And it was wonderful because as I came in, our new vice president of planning initiated a quick conversation with me and addressed some of my issues that I've been struggling with for about a year now. It really gets pretty frustrating to not even be acknowledged. I mean, is that asking too much? Now, I must mention, I've gotten responses from a number of people, responses or follow-ups from Bonnie Slater, Mark Starnes, and Mark's boss. I'm sorry, I forget your name. But otherwise, nothing. Even my email from the last meeting, I couldn't be there, so I emailed my comments. Well, they weren't ready either. So I simply want to reinforce one last time. No, I'm sorry, one more time. One more time, because I'll never give up. Number one, as we've been discussing, competitive wages. I mean, how basic is that? And we've been going over and over. We have negotiations going. I can only hope and pray that there'll be a positive outcome. Number two, which I think I have the most influence on, that I think is something that we don't really, well, we're not really too aware of. And that is bus routes where the jobs are. You see all these for hire, for hire, for hire. And when you do a little researching, you find out that those for hire jobs are not being filled. You see, you know, what they pay, you don't get there in your SUV. You're hoping that there must be a bus service there, but there isn't. So we need to really work hard on making sure that we have bus routes where the jobs are. And the last thing is the disgusting lack of sanitation in our shelters. I mean, I can't even, until very recently, I couldn't even get a power washer. The maintenance guy said, oh, it's been broke for months. It's broke for months. So I did ask a guy to come through and power wash my particular one that was really bad. And he was very kind and he did it for me. So should our bus riders really sit in these unsanitary conditions? Thank you very much. Adopt a stop. That's good too.
Yes.
Are there any other members of the public? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Dawn Hammondtree. I live in Macomb County and I depend on both fixed route and paratransit. If you're thinking about it on paper, the bus running every half hour doesn't sound so bad until you're waiting at the stop and you miss a bus or it's delayed. Then you're waiting a very, very long time. To people who never take transit, that's probably fine. Why do they care? To people who only take transit, they're expecting it. It's baked into their lives. But the important part, what really impacts our city, is what happens when to people for whom transit is an option. The spiral goes like this. You go to take the bus instead of driving, thinking I'm going to have a couple of drinks or I don't want to worry about parking where I'm going. So you take a bus. First bus is right on time, but then you transfer from the fast crash it to a crosstown route and your bus is delayed. It only comes every 30 minutes, excuse me, if there's a driver available, which is not by no means guaranteed. And then you're waiting 40 minutes later, wondering where your bus is, knowing you could have driven there in 20 minutes. Why would you ever choose to take a bus again? The bus made you waste precious time on your day off just sitting there. So next time you drive, ridership goes down when the transit authority asks for more money for more buses and more drivers. People point to the ridership numbers and say, why should we pay for this instead of paying for our schools, police, parks, or roads? If we want to increase ridership, we need to actually design and fund functional transit networks. We want people to actually ride the bus, we need to make it a better option than driving, which means reliable service, which you don't get with a bus every 30 minutes, every 15, everywhere, all the time. And to accomplish this, there have to be enough drivers, experienced, competent drivers who are not going to quit in frustration because they're not being paid in a living wage or get a better offer from Chicago or Cincinnati or Ann Arbor. This could be a self-perpetuating system. Get enough drivers and people will ride the bus. Even in the Motor City, people want and desperately need good public transit. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Please come to the podium. Please state your name and county, please.
Hi, my name is Ella. I'm from Livingston County, Michigan. Now I know what you're thinking at this point. Wow, an outsider. We don't pander to outsiders here. Just keep in mind that if you don't support public transit, that's exactly what you're doing, pandering to outsiders. When you have highways cutting through the city, that benefits outsiders. But if you support public transit here, you benefit the people that live here in Detroit. I took the 462 bus this morning to get down here. It's not the best experience, but we need to pay drivers more here. We need to pay drivers more, and we need to improve service, expand service throughout this region. That's the point of this, is to be able to get people where they need to go. Because, I hang out in all four corners of Southeast Michigan just for fun. I can handle the bus being late, but there are people who rely on the bus being on time to get to work. And if you fail those people, you are failing the city of Detroit and you are failing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Matt Carrier, Wayne County. So I just want to begin by stating some examples of missed buses that have happened to me. So just this last week, just Monday, during the torrential downpours, a bus missed me while I was in downtown on Woodward and Clifford. The 261 didn't show. No show. Torrential downpour. Lucky for me, the next one showed up and I made it home. The week before that, I had a no-show at 6 a.m. in the morning. I was trying to get to the train station in Dearborn. 250 did not show. I called in. I was told that there was no operator that day, that no one showed up. This isn't the operator's fault. This isn't the bus driver's fault. This is a systemic issue going on. There's a saying, right? If you have a bad apple, you have a bad apple. If all your apples are going bad, you should check the trees, right? And it's not the drivers or the apples, it's these missed routes, right? All these missed routes. If you have in the 20% misses, something is going on systemic and smart. So I want to know, just as Stephen asked, when did you take the bus last? Did you take the bus here? Did you take the bus to the last Taylor meeting? Right? I doubt many of you did, but I would like to know if you did. The other thing I would like to know is what is your turnover rate? 3 months, 6 months, 12, 36 months for your bus operators. Because if you have high turnover, that is again, systemic problem, something going on, right? Something that indicates that you cannot retain people. And I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine that you are paying more to keep hiring people than if you just raised the rates for those operators. Again, speculation, but imagine the data is out there to support that. Please pay your drivers more. You get what you pay for, right? And if you're not paying them more, they don't have incentive to show up on time. They don't have incentive to be here, and they're being overworked as is, right? If you're 100 drivers down, that is more time that these drivers who are present need to be spending on the roads to make up for it. They're overworked, they're overstressed, they're underpaid. Please take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Pontiac City Councilman Mikhail Goodman from Oakland County. So first thing I want to say is, I think it's been said multiple times how massively important public transit is to everyone that is in this room and also most everyone in this region, because we recognize that despite this being the Motor City, that is a very unaffordable dream for a lot of people, nor should it actually be a dream for any of us. We should be investing heavily in public, renewable, reliable transit for everyone, because long before the auto industry said otherwise, that was the way that things were supposed to work when it came to getting in and around cities. But I'm not here to teach and belabor about the purpose of public transit. But what I do want to speak about is a couple of different fundamental issues. One is that we should not have to come here as citizens who pay into the system through taxes, through millages, one of the ones that passed in Oakland County, making sure that SMART had enough money. We should not be having to sit here and fight and ask for drivers to be paid more. We should not have to ask that SMART work with them and honor the contract that they've been has not been operating for multiple months. We see that there is labor movement all over this country currently. I mean, the fact that UPS almost brought this country to an entire halt, that's on purpose. There should be a recognition that workers have the majority of the power, and we should operate that way, because these people who have these jobs are the ones that make sure that the system that we're funding into, that municipalities are paying into, that citizens are paying into with their taxes, runs and functions the way that it's supposed to. On top of that, I also want to mention the fundamental problem that we are even having to have really this conversation on a regular basis, that fact that we have to come out and demonstrate and protest, because I would assume that SMART, being a public transportation authority, should be focusing primarily on expanding public transit. And while I do see that is happening in some areas, there needs to be a more concerted focus, because again, we should not have to come down here. We entrust you to do these jobs with the money that we give you. And it's not to say that I want to remove money from you. I am not the don't pay taxes individual. I'm the person that believes that everyone should be paying their fair share in taxes to make sure that the system works. But if we're going to be doing that, people need to have a return on their investment, because we are not worried about the stakeholders who have all the money. We're worried about the people who actually use transit, as I have for multiple years, also off and on again when things happen to me in life. So as a elected official for a city of people who need public transit, I very much encourage you to continue to do the work to expand public transit for everyone, but also please pay your damn workers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think I did my whole 3 minutes, so I do have one more.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, you were given 3 minutes. We have to let the next speaker speak, please. Thank you.
I did use my whole 3 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll write you and maybe you'll answer.
Okay. Thank you, sirs. Please state your name and county.
Yes, my name is Ethan Benedict. I live in Oakland County. In addition to paying your drivers a living wage, I was also concerned about the state of the bus stop along Northland Drive between Northwest Highway and Greenfield Road. I need to lean on the city of Southfield to get that properly illuminated with streetlights, but I had heard a rumor that those bus stops would be relocated in the coming months or years. I was wondering if anybody knew who I would have to talk to learn whether or not those rumors were factual. Okay, I'm not the right place for this question. Okay. Anyway, about bus driver pay, we need to pay our bus drivers a living wage because driving a bus, believe it or not, it certainly seems to me to be a skilled trade. We are moving several tons of steel along a road at 35, 45, 55 miles an hour, as however traffic may be. And we are maneuvering, and we are asking our drivers to maneuver it around other people and throughout the built environment without hurting anybody or the machine itself. This is worth a lot more than a barely surviving wage of what, 19 an hour? Or, yeah, around 19 an hour. It's not enough. It's not enough for a person to be able to build a life around. And this is a specified skill set that takes time and effort to learn and develop. And if we keep losing people to other cities and other transit systems, we're still just putting in that base level investment and not getting our return out of it in skilled, competent drivers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon to all. I am Shetron Collier. I am the president and business agent for ATU Local 26 that represents the drivers for the city of Detroit.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your name, please?
Shetron Collier. SCHETRONE. I'm standing here in support of my brother local 1664, who are the drivers that operate the smart coaches. I have been an operator myself for over 34 years. One thing that I know and why I'm here in support of them, although I don't drive for Smart, we are brothers of the same union. They do what I do. For 34 years, I went out there, I picked up passengers. When the news comes on and tells everybody else, stay off the roads, the bus drivers have to go. Now, I don't know about Smart, but I know that in 34 years, DDOT has never stopped, never on a day, no matter what, tornadoes, blizzards, whatever the situation is, operators have to go. This is a core service that the public depends on. You have to pay them more. DDOT is in the same struggle. And I'm going through my battles on my side with the people who I have to speak with, but I am here to support in their battle as well. You just have to pay people more. You have to compete. The landscape has changed in the job market. Bus drivers were never able to work from home. And if the pandemic didn't teach us anything, it told us who was important. You would have never believed that the guy that puts the food on the shelves at Walmart was as important as he was. When you were in there, you couldn't buy anything because he wasn't there to put it on the shelf. That showed us a lot. People never had to stop moving throughout the pandemic. And as DDOT operators, we took a stand, okay, to stop the service when we were not safe, when we couldn't get the PPE and stuff that we needed. I personally did not miss one day of work during the pandemic, but I had plenty of drivers calling me, crying, saying I can't do it because there was so much unknowns connected to what COVID was. But your operators showed up as well through that whole thing, and everybody praised us. But now that we seem to think it's over, now we're back to the old fights. Stop fighting these old fights. Let's move forward. Let's be progressive and give them the money they deserve.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Brebander. I've been taking the SMART bus since 1978, when I would take the bus to my co-op job at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Lately, when I was working as a patient advocate at Detroit Receiving Hospital, I took the bus to and from work every day. That was such a high value for me. I had such a challenging job. It was a half an hour where I could decompress or prepare or read a book. These days, the bus predictability is worse than in 1978 when I had paper bus schedules and crossed my fingers. Luckily, customer service at SMART has been very helpful. I believe it was 2 weeks ago, the 420 at Southfield and 14 Mile never showed up. At least I was able to call customer service, who was able to tell me, yes, they had no bus coming, and it would be another hour and 15 minutes. That's how that bus is scheduled. The bus stop is in the sun. There is no bench. I was able to walk from Southfield to Woodward to catch a bus. I also would have had the option of taking an Uber, but there are people out there who do not have that option. Where does this leave them? It is unreliable. I prefer to take the bus. It gives me exercise, socializing. I have met 2 people in my neighborhood today. The bus drivers are so valuable to us. I can tell you I have left my purse on the bus twice in about the last 5 years. I have gotten it back each time with everything still in it. That speaks to these drivers. They are caring, and they have the one job I always realized was harder than being a patient advocate at Detroit Receiving Hospital. One of the first things I would do when I got on shift was hand out bus tickets to everybody who's been discharged and need to go home. I know what they deal with, and they deal with it while driving a bus. They deserve adequate wages, and we really deserve adequate service. I thank you for what you do.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Stephen Hammontree. I'm a resident of Macomb County. One second. My name is Stephen Hammontree. I'm a resident of Macomb County, and I do not like driving. It is scary. I am not a safe driver. I have data. And I'm glad there are people out here that can do that for me. I want there to keep being people out here that can do that for me, that I can rely on to be there and to get me where I need to go. But you're not paying them enough. And we need to fix that. There was a trip I took with my mom sitting over there. The day after the last board meeting, we went to the fireworks in Mount Clemens, and we needed to get home at 10:40 p.m. And there was a bus driver that day, but we took paratransit. There was one bus driver, but she said that she had to stay late to provide us that trip instead of someone being scheduled for that shift normally. That's not a good thing. So we need to pay drivers more, and we need to make sure that we can actually retain them so that we can get service back up to reliable levels. Because another thing about this is that I am unemployed at the moment. I am scared to go looking for a job because of how unreliable the buses are. Because I don't think I would be able to keep it when, let's say, my second day rolls around and the bus doesn't show up. That's, yeah, I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to cut myself off here. Pay your drivers more.
Thank you, Mr. Hammontree.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Lucas Lasecki. I'm a regular smart rider. I hail from Farmington Hills, Oakland County. I'd like to begin by congratulating the new class of operators that I understand graduated from training a couple of weeks ago. It's nice to see that at least a few more people will be added to SMART's pool of operators to maybe take a chip at solving the crisis, but I do have to wonder how many of those operators will stay? How many will remain in a group of people who make $19 an hour, less even than their counterparts across the river in Windsor who make 24. I learned that from a driver today. How long are they going to stay working without a contract? They have been for nearly 7 months now, and I think they're going to get tired of it pretty quick. So many of them have been leaving, going to Ann Arbor, going other places where they can work in better conditions for better pay and get better benefits. That's causing more canceled runs, still a problem, still straining people in record heat, smoky air, and insane thunderstorms. I saw a bit of that yesterday. But mostly, I'm concerned with how it's affecting the Oakland Transit project. That was the greatest achievement of my life, being a part of bringing SMART to the entirety of Oakland County for the first time in my life, for the first time in nearly 30 years. Transit out to Novi, Rochester, Waterford. You've heard it before. You've heard it more than you hear Taylor Swift. But it's turning bittersweet because all we've seen so far is a plan that's going to call for the discontinuation of other routes. You forced the scheduling department to kill the 400 so that we could get our new routes. That's not acceptable. You need to negotiate a contract. You need to pay the drivers more. Get on this. Get on solving this crisis so that you can capitalize on the biggest opportunity SMART has had in decades to bring its service more in line with other cities in the US. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Stephen Boyle. I live in Wayne County. And I wanted to mention that it's been a few times that I've actually met people who were tourists in the metropolitan area. And it's always an interesting conversation of asking them, okay, so where are you going to? So I can assist you as a fellow rider. But then when are you coming back home? Because the return visit home, they assume, as most metropolitan areas have, that there's actually night service that would get them to where they need to be. It doesn't exist here very well. It's abysmal trying to take the bus late at night. Most of our last run buses, whether it's DDOT or SMART, are completely filled to capacity. And you really need to look at those numbers because the capacity on the last run, that means these people have no more opportunities to get home. So they're getting on that last visit that they can possibly get out. So I think if you want to talk about tourism, buses are very, very much a cornerstone toward having robust tourism in the metropolitan area. And we need to improve our service so that people can come here and not have to burden themselves with getting a car, figuring out how these roads work and where are they trying to get to. It's actually not very safe to have a tourist driving around when they don't know where they're going and they're distracted the entire visit. It's easier for them to get on a bus or to take a shuttle from the bus to where they need to get to. We need to work more on intermodal opportunities. Intermodal includes things like bike shares, scooter sharing, shuttles. We need to look at, and these things are going to alleviate the fix our roads strategy. Fix our roads is a failing strategy when it comes to mass transit. We need to be leading this country when it comes to transit alternatives. That includes electronic vehicles and it includes electronic trains and more. This city and this state could use an awful lot more help. And we need you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any more speakers in the public?
Hello, Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Thomas Yazbek. I live in Rochester Hills in Oakland County. I should add, there's a lot of people here who are doing a great job of advocating for SMART. I feel like some of them should get a job because sometimes I feel like the agency doesn't do a good enough job of communicating things to people. The fact that we're all out here kind of speaks to that, you know, in addition to the service problems that people just don't, there's not a lot of trust in SMART to even get the word out about things that are happening. So, and I'll cut to, I don't want to go on too long, but there are consequences for this. You know, it's not just people losing their jobs, missing appointments, but it's political too. You know, voters are expecting SMART to deliver on countywide transit in Oakland County where I live, right? And so many of those voters voted against renewing SMART's funding, and they're going to look at bad service and say, why am I getting taxed now for this? So there are obviously SMART as an agency cannot advocate for, cannot tell people to vote yes or no on something like that. But just, the future of the agency is in doubt when it takes so long to address a crisis like this. Most of the other people have pointed out all the reasons why, it's bad for people, but it's bad for economic development too, because there's a massive brain drain going on. So most of my high school graduating class don't live in Oakland County anymore. A few of them have moved to downtown Detroit, but most of them moved to Chicago or elsewhere. So SMART plays an essential role in keeping people and businesses in Michigan. And I hope you recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else?
Hi, my name is Deborah Freer. I hail from Farmington Hills also. I appreciate the board paying attention so diligently to all of the comments here. I would like to be a SMART bus rider, but I can't because it takes, I live just off of 11 Mile and Middlebelt. And I believe that route is going away, but unfortunately, it would take me 2 hours and 20 minutes to get to my office if I took SMART. But I really want to. I know there's a lot of people out in our area that would like to too. The ridership is out there for the getting. I hope that the SMARTBoard and staff can see TRU not just as a rabble rouser, but an assistive organization that helps to bring you rider feedback. We have worked very hard with the Michigan legislature to get another 60 million in local bus operating funds in the next budget coming up. Unfortunately, 45 million is one-time funding, which we do recognize. Excuse me, we do recognize that you cannot restore service or put new service out with one-time funding. But we are continuing to meet with legislators. We are continuing to fight for SMART. I know it might seem sometimes as though we're fighting against SMART, but we're not. We appreciate all the work that you do. We hope to be able to help you in some capacity. And I hope that we can turn this around. I know there is a commission on increasing Michigan population, but I think everybody in here knows that one of these significant answers is more and better public transit. Young professionals all over the country and in Michigan have said they need better public transit. They don't want to drive. They don't want to be mandated by the cityscape to spend money on a car and transportation. I have 2 kids in college and one is disabled. I would love to give up my car so I can just put that money towards their college education and things like that. But unfortunately, I can't. Again, I hope you see TRU as an ally and we can continue to help SMART either way. I am a former staff member of the ride, and I do when people hear that, they talk about the comparisons between SMART and the ride. Obviously, it's comparing apples to oranges, and I let them know that SMART does have great people. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joel Batterman. I live in Wayne County in Detroit. I'm not a regular SMART rider currently, but did rely on SMART for some time to get up to work in Ferndale. Before I forget, I just want to mention that I really hope that future board meetings at other locations, the suburban board meetings that you've been having, and we'll be having at Macomb Community College campus next month. You know, I don't think that's a bad idea in itself, but I really hope that they can be at locations that are more convenient to transit riders. There's very little service to the, I guess they call it the central campus of Macomb Community College. I know there are a lot of fine dining and shopping options on Hall Road, but if you know, there's a possibility that in future those meetings can be on, say, the fast routes, for instance, that would be better for riders. I guess at this point, I just don't understand. I don't understand what, you know, I'm not privy to the details of the negotiations, but I just don't understand why there hasn't been a resolution to the contract. Certainly there was a time when SMART was being operated on a shoestring. You know, obviously the millage rate is still much lower than most agencies in the state. But you know, it's not like you're rolling in money. But after the you know, after the passage of the countywide millage last year, the strong support and just the fact that you know, you haven't been fully staffed, you know, I don't understand what the holdup is. And if it's, you know, if it's not wages, if it's something else, then you know, maybe there can be some give and take on the wage front. Yeah, I guess I just don't understand why it hasn't been more of a priority for the agency. And I encourage folks, you know, if you know, the folks who work for the 3 county executives, you know, perhaps if you're able to get your bosses involved, if they could be helpful. They've, you know, certainly have had experience in negotiations. So if we could get the county executives involved with this issue, perhaps you know, whatever it takes to bring this to a resolution, because it's been way too long, and we need to pay our drivers better. We need to provide the service that riders deserve. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Richard Sager and I am from Fraser in Macomb County. For your consideration, I would like to bring up how I live off of 15 Mile and Garfield. And so I mostly rely on the 780, which is the crosstown, which runs from Gratiot Avenue to Long Lake, which is a very long route. As I have recently been on the bus and the driver talking to a passenger saying how she wished that could potentially be split into 2, because it usually just is very long, and it in duration tends to be on the hour. So if you miss it, you have to wait a whole another hour to catch it, pretty much. And the cutoff in Birmingham in particular is, I recognize it as 9:50, and if unfortunately it gets canceled, that means have to get an Uber, which has happened to me once before. Also, I think about how, oh yes, it doesn't have service on Sundays, which means that if I want to go somewhere, I have to walk all the way, usually an hour's worth over to Gratiot to get down on the usually either the 8 mile or all the way to Detroit, and then vice versa up to something off of Woodward if it's something in Oakland County. So certainly I would suggest expanding services and to consider the possibility of more hours and the splitting it up, the route into more shorter routes, perhaps even a local throughout the boundary line between Oakland and Macomb counties. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that wants to speak?
Hi there, my name is Maya Ponton Aronoff. I'm with the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition, and I live in 48210. And a lot of great points have been made. I just wanted to say, as a taxpayer in the city, workers is where I want my money to go. There's nothing else I'd rather pay for. Please pay these workers the wage that they deserve. And I think it's really upsetting that workers like bus drivers were considered so essential during the pandemic, they had to risk their lives to take us around, but then now they're not being paid as though they're essential. They're being paid like they're disposable. And people have really talked about a lot of the day-to-day needs of public transit. I'm one of those people who wishes that they could be taking the bus, but wouldn't be able to make it to work in a reasonable amount of time. And so I had to use all my savings to get a car. And yeah, so, but I'm going to talk about a couple different things that haven't been mentioned yet. I wanted to talk first about general public safety. So when we have more buses, when we have more accessible buses, when it's easier to take the bus, we have more bus drivers, we don't need as many cars, which means less traffic fatalities. It means less car accidents. It means that regular Detroiters, this is a working class city, will have more money in their pockets that they don't have to spend on cars, car insurance, car repairs, etc. And that makes it safer for kids going to school, people crossing the street, disabled folks who are rolling around our corners and are currently endangered by how many cars we have. It also gets into an environmental justice issue where we have a massive air pollution problem in the city. And yes, personal vehicles aren't the major driving force behind that. It's mostly industrial pollution and trucks, but still we have really high rates of asthma, really high rates of respiratory issues. I'm one of the people who suffers from those things, and things like wildfires, flare-ups are just going to get worse. And so when we transition to more buses, we have a cleaner, greener city. We have less air pollution. We need to have less traffic on the roads. And that helps us meet our environmental goals in a way that's a heck of a lot cheaper than transitioning to, trying to put an electric vehicle charger in every corner. Well, if you have electric buses with well-paid drivers and they're reliable, you need a quarter of as many chargers, and that's going to save the city money in the long run. And also, last thing I want to say is just that my tax dollars are currently going to millions of dollars in subsidies for billionaire developers to focus on new Detroit residents or big businesses downtown. But what about the longtime Detroit residents? What about folks living in the regular neighborhoods? That's where money should be going, and public transit is one of the major ways to do that. Thank you so much.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ayana Grace King. I live in the 48202 zip code, so right here in Warren County. I am also working for MEJC, and I second everything that comes about environmental justice. I am going to speak as someone who takes the bus to work. I am an organizer for the community, and I'm also an urban farmer. So I use the bus to go to work, to grow food, to feed people for free. And taking the bus between both jobs in my house is a lot, especially at night when I'm on the farm until 8 o'clock at night and I have to wait 2 hours for a bus because the one that was scheduled didn't come, and the one after that didn't come, and then the one after that may or may not come. And as a Black queer woman, standing outside at 10 o'clock at night is not safe. As somebody who's an essential worker in every single part of her life, not being able to rely on other essential workers is really hard. And $15 an hour is not a livable wage in any kind of capacity. I got paid $15 an hour last year as a farmer, as someone who's in a relationship with 2 dogs. I was living paycheck to paycheck. There were many times I went to work without food, and nobody cared because there wasn't enough money to give me more money. And that's to expect people to come to work to feed and to service the community, but then they don't have what they need to be stable mentally, to be stable in terms of food, to be stable in terms of their kids. It contributes to the fact of why people are leaving Detroit instead of staying in Detroit. So I urge you guys to think about the livable wage. I urge you guys to think about how many people contribute to your groceries, contribute to your kids getting to and from where they have to go, contribute to your grandkids being able to be here and saying they're a long life Detroiter or Michigander. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the members of the public who are able to participate. We appreciate it. Moving on to the chairperson's report. Does it matter? Okay, there we go. I just wanted to take this opportunity because it came up in several of the comments, discussion about Oakland Transit and the countywide millage that we approved last fall, which of course we're very excited about. And we now have a transit office and a transit manager. But just to remind the public, it is for Oakland County, broader than the service that SMART provides. Although we are very pleased that SMART's going to be expanding their service. So just a few quick updates. We are very happy that the Board of Commissioners approved our request to expand our local reimbursement program. So communities outside of the current SMART footprint who are spending money on transit services are being reimbursed for those services. Also very pleased that we're taking to the Board of Commissioners for approval in August a contract with People's Express. So service can start through People's Express for the communities in Western Oakland. So we're very pleased about that. Also good meetings in Northwest, the Hollies and the Springfields of the world in terms of how we can expand transit services to those very, very far north and west communities. So all of that is very positive, in addition to the expansions that North Oakland Transit Authority and the Older Persons Commission and Western Oakland Transit Authority are undertaking because of the millage. Also I'd like to compliment Harmony Lloyd for all of the work that she's been doing with the city of Bloomfield Hills and working through the issues that exist there so we can get bus stops and service to those areas, which is currently, has always been kind of a gap in service on Woodward Avenue. If you can think about Woodward in those big stretches, it's not necessarily easy because if you get off on the north end, you have to come back on the south end and it's a wide express. So she's very much working through the concerns that they have, and we're hoping that we can resolve those so that we can have stops along that passage in Woodward. Also, Brett is, starting a much deserved vacation with his family today. But I do want to mention, because his planning division, working collaboratively with our transit division and the Board of Commissioners, are starting to work with communities that have TIFAs and DDAs who are capturing the transit millage. So that they can think through, mobility and walkability and ways that they may be able to use the additional revenue coming into their capture to support transit opportunities in those areas. So that's just a few quick updates as it relates to Oakland Transit. And I will turn it over to Mr. Farrell for the general manager's report.
Oh. Hello, everybody. I had a very long and complex general manager's report I was going to do, but I decided against it. But I do want to make some comments as it relates to actually some of the comments that have been made here today. We have an executive session scheduled today, and we will continue to have executive sessions for this board on an ongoing basis to brief you on where we are with labor negotiations with our 4 unions. So that you will know what that is. But I'd also like to make a couple of comments. The situation as it relates to the shortage of drivers is not just a SMART issue. It is a nationwide issue. It did not start because of the pandemic. It started before the pandemic. Now, I've heard comments here today about people and how long they've driven and this and what have you. Some people may not know I drove. I was a member of the ATU for 10 years. So I certainly understand what it's like to be a bus operator and the issues that bus operators go through. I have not forgotten it, although it has been a minute ago. I would agree that the wages that we pay aren't competitive. That's not lost on us. So we understand that. But if wages alone could fix this, it would have been fixed a long time ago. So there's not a single issue. There are multiple issues that have to be addressed in terms of ultimately coming up with a contract for 4 different unions that have 4 different things to address. What works for mechanics doesn't work for operators. What works for fixed route operators doesn't work for paratransit operators, and what works for supervisors doesn't work for anybody else. So trying to be able to get all those pieces to fit together. Now, later in this meeting, you'll get a rather detailed presentation on the efforts that have taken place over the last couple of years to be able to hire operators. But one of the things that I cannot stress enough is, and I said it just a minute ago, if it was just wages alone, that'd be much easier to deal with. I want to say this because I think it's a couple things. One, because we're in negotiations, we're really not at liberty to go back and forth with the public about what we did and what we offered and what have you. That we're not going to negotiate in the press. We're not going to do that. But we are trying to negotiate. When I talked about there being not being a singular issue, we cannot provide, and I want everybody in here to understand that we as an organization know that this is a service business. We can't do what we do without human beings. Doesn't work. And what it takes to attract and retain talent today is not the same thing it took to attract and retain talent when I started some time ago. I'll let you guys figure that part out. But I want the public to understand that we know that. I'll say this and then I'll close. Any work rule that was in place when I started driving the bus, August 11th, 1980, and I'll let you guys do the math. For those of you who are mathematically challenged, that's 43 years ago next month, has no place in the workplace today. And so what it takes to attract a talent is different. There are more jobs. We have far more competition for jobs. And it's not just the wages than what others have. So again, this is a very complex issue. I want everybody to be able to understand that. And I want everybody who's here and who's listening to know that we are committed as an organization to providing the service that this region needs to grow and to develop, and that people who depend on us need to have. And so with that, that concludes my GM report. And then the HR briefing update that's going to come under the briefing section will go into much more detail about what we have done thus far, and will probably in some instances answer some questions that have been asked today.
Thank you. Before we move to that, if we might, if there are any questions for the general manager, and if I might ask one question, make a comment and ask a question. First, I don't know. Does it matter if it's on, Tiffany?
It does. Yes.
Yeah, we want people to hear you.
First, I mean, more time, and then I'm just gonna talk really loud, because that's what I can do. Okay, thank you. First of all, I mean, if it does not go without saying, it should be said that this board supports our bus drivers and our employees and competitive wages and livable wages and all of those things. We have done so in Oakland County. We have provided more and more of our employees the right to join a union and collectively bargain. And so there's no question that this board supports a livable wage. And I also agree with you that it is my view that negotiations should be done not in the media and not in the public domain, because there has to be back and forth. So given that caveat, if you want to find a different way to answer this question, but you did say you talked about wages. So let me just ask you, are wages the sticking point?
I don't think that wages are the sticking point, no.
So there is a whole array of issues that have to be agreed on. And generally, a strategy is that nothing is agreed to until everything is agreed to.
Exactly.
So more of the issues are other issues to make sure that we have the type of workplace that not only supports our workers, but allows us to get drivers who may be called off or may be coming off the board in a more efficient, more effective workplace. There's lots of issues that are involved in this negotiation.
One of the things that we want to make sure that we tackle with this one, and it's been mentioned often, and this is a United States problem, not just transit, is retaining talent. Attracting is one thing, but keeping them here. And so the things that it takes to keep them here are things that there are some things that we have to negotiate, and there are some things that we're just doing. But it takes all of those things. And so there's a give and take that goes with negotiations in order to be able to accomplish it. So we want to make sure that when we hire somebody, because we understand how much it costs to train somebody and all the efforts that it takes to be able to do that. But as you'll be able to see when you see the presentation, you can see the efforts that we've done, and you can also recognize that part of the issue is our ability to retain. And there are a whole host of reasons that come into play as it relates to retaining talent. It's a very different environment than what transit historically has had to deal with. So we don't have the franchise on it, but I do think that we have some solutions that can work long term. And I'll just say this because it's part of it. It's the largest demographic out there is not a baby boomer. The largest demographic out there is millennials. And everybody in this room understands that millennials and how they function and how they think is different. So how we go about creating a work environment that can be attractive for millennials, Generation X, and all of that is what we're trying to go about without going into a whole lot of details.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for the general manager or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Listening today to all the comment from the public and how they feel about this service in some area, about the benefit of the people who work for SMART, all that have a value, and we pay attention to that. And we work together to make sure our employee well protected and provided with income that have good standard of living to be able to raise a family and live decent living. On the other hand, we have the responsibility to protect the organization to be able to survive and provide the services to the public they need. So it's a win-win situation when we try to protect both sides, not one only. And I want everybody to know this board here have a reputation with the leadership we have now with the SMART as we aiming to enhance the benefit and the pay wages for the employee. But we need to protect those jobs and protect the organization. And working together probably and the support of the public, we will accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay, so we will go on to item number 10, which are the board briefings. Ms. Jackson? I think you're gonna do HR hiring update.
Is it on? Okay. Yes. Good afternoon. Today's presentation is going to be on SMART's hiring goals as it relates to our fixed route operators and paratransit operators. The presentation will provide a brief summary on what are our fixed route operators and paratransit operator position staffing goals. Also, how our recruitment efforts have impacted and increased the submission of applications for the positions of fixed route operator and paratransit operator, and why, despite of our recruitment efforts, we still haven't reached our hiring goals. And lastly, what needs to be determined in order for SMART to reach its fixed route operators and paratransit operators hiring goals. Our staffing goal right now is to have 400 fixed route operators. On and on. It's okay. Our staffing goal is to have 400 fixed route operators, 145 paratransit. Okay, here. Okay. Our staffing goal is to have 400 fixed route operators and 145 paratransit operators. To date, we have 300 fixed route operators and 98 paratransit operators. Our need is to hire 100 fixed route operators and 47 paratransit operators. The primary tool that has been used by SMART to fill staffing positions and identify future employees as operators is recruitment. In the past, SMART's efforts were not as energetic or aggressive as they are today. When looking at the period of June 2021 through June 2022, we received 365 applications for the subject positions of fixed route operators and 201 for paratransit operators, for a total number of 566 applications. From that application pool or applicant pool, we hired 63 fixed route operators and 21 paratransit operators for a total number of 84. When you look at the next year or the next period, we received 978 applications for fixed route operators, 396 for paratransit operators, for a total number of 1,374 applications. This was a 143% increase from the year before. This increase was due to a couple of things. One was HR marketing campaigns that involved offerings of new hire and referral bonuses, the hiring of Q&M marketing firm who began rigorously issuing advertisements for open operators positions, the use of social media like Facebook and LinkedIn, 5 job or recruitment fairs occurring within 9 months, targeting the areas of Detroit, Southfield, Novi, Dearborn, and Pontiac. From this recruitment effort, we hired 113 fixed route operators, and this hiring actually exceeded our goal to hire 100 fixed route operators by 13 hirees. We also hired 49 paratransit operators, and this exceeded our goal to hire 47 paratransit operators by 2, with a total number of 162 hires. So now you're probably thinking, well, what happened? Because we still haven't reached our goal of 400 fixed route operators and 145 paratransit operators. What happened is we lost 77 hirees during their training process. When a fixed route operator, paratransit operator is hired, they are required to participate in eight-week training period. That training consists of classroom curriculum and on-the-road training with a senior operator. During the July 22 through July 23 period, we held 20 operator training classes for the 162 hired operators. From the 162 operators, we retained 52.5% or 85 of our new hires. The remaining 47.5% or 77 hires / trainees were lost during training. One of the reasons they were lost during training is due to resignation. There were 68.8% or 53 of the 77 hires or trainees that resigned. Some of the reasons that they resigned was due to no call, no show, pay rate and scheduling, pursuit of other employment, childcare issues, and license requirements, CLP license. The other 31.2% or 24 of the 77 hirees / trainees were separated due to attendance, misconduct, accidents, and violation of drug and alcohol policy. Based on these percentages, during this July 22 through July 23 period, we lost 6.4 trainees per month of the new hired operators. So we lost 6.4 each month, estimated, of our trainees. So in order for SMART to reach our staffing goal of the 400 fixed route operators and 145 paratransit operators, we have to add this attrition rate, this 6.4, to the equation, along with other reasons why we do not have the remaining 147 operators. We need to look at the areas of resignations, retirements, and terminations. During July 2022 through July 2023, we had 85 resignations by operators. We had 17 retire and 48 terminations. Monthly, this comes out to 7.1 resignations, 1.42 retirements, and 4 terminations. This adds up to a total amount, attrition, monthly total average operators lost to attrition between June 2022 through July 2023 is 18.2 employees that we lose monthly. So with this attrition rate of 18.92 added to the monthly rate in which we need to hire operators, which would be 12.25. So we would need 12 operators hired every month in order to get to that 147.
That we need to hire 31 people a month.
Oh, no, I was getting
Okay.
to that. Dwight. The 147 divided by 12 equals the 12.25, the 12 that we would need to hire. we have to include the attrition rate of the 18.92 because that has to be a part of the equation, as I said earlier. It has to be a part of the equation because that's what we're losing. And so when you add them together, we need to hire 31.17 operators every month in order to reach our goal of 400 fixed route operators and 145 paratransit operators. If we do not reduce this attrition rate, if we don't reduce this attrition rate, that 31.17 is what we would have to do. Currently, our average hiring rate for operators is 23. It's 23 operators a month. So if we, with that, and that includes an attrition rate, we would only be hiring 4 operators a month. 4. If we stick to the way we're doing things right now, we'd be at 4 operators a month, which means it would take us about 3 years to reach our goal of 400 fixed route operators and 145 paratransit operators. And so this information represents we do have an issue with retention. That is a huge issue for us, huge. And so that is some areas that we need to work on, and that is our goal. That's what this presentation is presenting, giving some numbers and figuring out how we're going to reach the goal of those 400 fixed route operators and 145 paratransit operators. So before I finish, I do want to indicate from these numbers, it shows recruitment is working. Recruitment is working. We're getting applications. From that standpoint, we are getting applications. Is what happens beyond that. It is what we have to work on. So, Madam Chair, that's the goal. That's the goal here. To increase our retention rates so we can cut the attrition rate and have the operators we need within a shorter amount of time than the 3 years it would take if we continue to work the way we're working right now.
I'd like to add something to that. Assuming that the attrition rate stays the same, we have to hire 31 people a month to come out of training. So what we're also looking at simultaneously, and one of the reasons why we've made some restructuring as it relates to operator training, is to increase the bandwidth of training. Part of what our challenge has been is the throughput. In other words, how many people can we get through training in a time frame? And so we're working right now to try to be able to increase that. If we can increase, now I agree with Ms. Jackson that trying to bring their attrition rate down, obviously that's something we want to do. And hopefully as we get through the negotiations and what have you, that will help. But in the interim, we've got to increase the number of people that we have. Now, I'll also say that there are, if you can go back a slide. Go back one more. Wait a minute. The reasons for terminations is what I'm looking for. Right there. So the issues below, the items that cause people to not stay here, particularly the childcare and the pay and schedule. People know how much they're making when they come here, but the schedule's brutal. Childcare, when you have a job like a bus operator, that's a tough thing because that's not an 8 to 5 kind of job. So if you thought maybe you could do it, or you were dependent upon a family member or something in order to be able to help you do that, and that fell through, then that's an issue. The other thing is that we are being aggressive and consistent about the 4 items. Accidents. If you're not doing well in training with accidents, we're not going to retain you. It just stands to reason. If you have an attendance problem in training, we're not going to retain you. Same thing with misconduct, complaints, and those sort of things. So we're we're being aggressive in terms of making sure that we weed out people, which in some instances it increases the attrition rate, but the alternative have far greater ramifications to the organization, particularly in the space of safety. So as you, in my comment in my general manager's report, I said that this was a complex issue. That it's just not a singular thing. And so our ability to be able to increase the bandwidth, to be able to increase the number of people that we can train helps. And those are all things that we are discussing now to try to be able to address.
Should, we can take some questions at this juncture then? Ms. Jackson, is that okay? So first off, congratulations. That is the recruitment, as you say, is working, and that 143% increase, is really good to see. In your experience, are any of those percentages as it relates to the training, the people who don't pass the training, and then the attrition rates? Is it typical for this type of industry? Is it like, what do you make of it in terms of the experience that you've seen in other places? And Dwight, I guess the same for you in terms of, transit agencies.
For incoming employees that have to go through a training program, it's typical. It's typical. Yes,
Okay.
it's typical.
It is for bus operators in particular, it is becoming more of the industry norm. It wasn't always that way, but let me put it this way. Part of the changes that have happened in the country over the last however many years is there's a more diverse work pool. And more people have responsibility for their children, and the hours that they have to work as a bus operator in particular are not conducive to traditional hours, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And that is an absolute challenge that we as an industry have to try to deal with. Most childcare, I'll give an example, most childcare is closed at 6 o'clock. If you're an operator, you're not getting off at 6 o'clock. And so what do you do with your kids? And if you have somebody who you're depending upon to keep your child, my own example, when I started as a bus operator, there was a period of time when I was divorced with a kid. If I had primary responsibility for my son, I would have had to have another job, or I would have been dependent upon my mother or someone else to pick my kid up from school. That's just the reality. And that's what's happening today. That's just one of the issues.
Mhm. Then the attrition rates, is that?
For retirement,
That seems low to me, but is it?
depending on the industry, that's about the same. The resignations are high.
Mhm.
Right. That's not typical.
Terminations?
Terminations for a month, that's average.
Yeah, from an industry perspective, those numbers are usually reversed. There are usually more people who get terminated than who quit.
Mhm.
But again, the things that cause people to quit is not about pay as much as it is about. I'll tell you what we'll try to do next month is give you an idea of a schedule for an operator coming out of training to see the hours that he or she has to work in the first month or so, if you're on the extra board. And when you see that, you can see, would you do it?
And you all start on the extra board.
Yes, that it's a seniority based. And so the extra board are the people who don't have assignments, who wait for somebody else to not come in. But when you see that, you'll have an idea of what it's like, to have your life upended, for lack of a better term.
Because I might be on the extra board working in the evening and then be called in to work in the morning.
Right. So I may have an assignment today that gets off at midnight and have an assignment tomorrow that goes to work 6 o'clock in the morning. And then the next day I may be doing something in between, and it's just something different every day. So it's not so much about it being different every day, but it is different as it relates to some days I get off at midnight and some days I get off at 5 o'clock.
Mr. Farrell, and correct me if I'm wrong, the extra board is also something that's collectively bargained.
That is correct.
Thank you.
It is, and Madam Chair, just a point of information, the 68.8% of the 53 of the 77 that resigned, the trainees that resigned, out of that number 53, only 4 had listed pay as a reason.
Okay.
Only 4.
Hearing all those problems.
Opportunities.
Well, you know, their problem why sometimes we don't have enough people to work because they're important issue, the child care, you know, those it's important. Thing came to my mind is some other transportation in the nation facing same problem, how they deal with it. We need to be open to study and see, because those it's important issue. You know, if I have a kids, I need to have a job to provide them with good living, but I have to take care of them too. In the same time, I can't be working on a schedule to get off 6 o'clock to pick them up from the school, and suddenly the supervisor telling me I have to work till 10. We need to find how other organizations dealing with those issues and try to debate those issues with you in the board here, try to find solutions. I mean, we can't give up because it's a difficult situation. We have to face the difficult situation and find solution and make sure our organization provide good job that does not affect the standard of living for normal family.
So there are some things that as an organization we are exploring, particularly as it relates to childcare. I can tell you that there are a couple of organizations, but they have a single facility. They actually have a daycare in there. We've got multiple facilities, so it's a little more of a challenge, but we are open to trying to partner with entities that will perhaps expand hours or keep longer hours if we subsidize them so that our employees can go to work. So I mean, there are some things out there that we're trying to explore that will address that particular issue. There are things that organizations are doing that are successful in retaining talent that we can adopt. Those that we can, we do. Those that have to be negotiated, we negotiate. And so that's where we are. And so as far as childcare is concerned, those are things that we're trying to do because it's in the best interest of the organization to be able to, for our employees not to worry about who's going to keep my kid.
Any other, Mr. Rand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Ms. Jackson, thank you so very much for the information. I just wanted to follow up with regards to some of the aspirational metrics versus some of the more adequate staffing levels that we're looking at. You talked about our goal of about 400 total operators. The question is, does that represent the total number of drivers to serve pre-pandemic?
Yes.
Okay. And then as a follow-up to that, with regards to the 300 operators, would that allow us to meet the needs for today's schedule? So if we had 300 individuals and we're able to, how would those 300 operators would help us establish and meet a number of the headways and objectives that we have with regards to our routes as they are today?
You're asking with the 300?
Yes.
Would you be able to do it with the 300?
Yeah.
No.
No,
No.
The 300 that we have, our schedules are such that if we had 300, we'd be able to reach the schedule that we're providing now.
Gotcha.
Obviously not pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
way. But the most recent service reductions that we made took into consideration the staffing level that is current, not aspirational, but what we knew that we could deliver.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate it. No, Ms. Jackson, very much appreciate your insights, not only with regards to the incredible achievements by you and your team with regards to getting the word out there and seeing the increases with regards to the number of applicants that are coming into the system. Undoubtedly, we're trying to adapt that in a way that will usher people through that system and providing more safeguards for potential employees and our existing employees. So you know, a job well done to you and your team. And undoubtedly, we as a board will continue to do anything that we can, not only to help us, you know, achieve that. And when we look at it, you know, as currently situated, do we have enough operators to meet today's schedule?
Based on the state number. That's a yes and a no.
Okay.
So yes, based on the scheduling the way it is right now to
Sure.
accommodate the number of drivers we have. But the ultimate goal, in order to reach the full capacity, I'll say it that way, we
Yeah.
need the 400.
Awesome. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you again. So we'll move on to item number B, the flex report. Mr. Whitehouse? Welcome.
Madam Chair, there we go. It's working now. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. So I wanted just to give a brief update on our Smart Flex service. Mel. Hang on the presentation so you can see some figures that we have for you. All right. So I want to start talking with ridership. So since I last reported to you, we have seen a steady increase in ridership. So we are now nearly 30,000 rides a month. So about 4 months ago, we were just under 25,000 miles, 25,000 rides a month, and we have skyrocketed up. Now, part of this, or most of this, is due to more driver onboardings from VIA and more shift claims. So more services, more vehicles on the road at a given time, able to provide more service. So I know the next thing we've been talking about is kind of the cost of the service. So Mel, if you could switch. So I wanted to give a brief update on or showcase the cost per ride and how as rides have gone up, hours have gone up, we are providing rides at a lower cost per ride. And this figure is across the entire Flex system. So DeAndre, next. So then the next question probably for the board would be, well, what is this doing to response times? So unfortunately, we have seen a slight increase in response time, about a minute to a minute and a half longer for average response time with those 5,000 rides that have been increasing over the last few months. To offset the response time, or to make sure that the response time stays within an acceptable level, our staff has gone more in depth on a day-to-day basis and is monitoring the deployment of vehicles throughout the entirety of the day, and has been more active in moving vehicles from zone to zone to make sure that wait times are evenly distributed between the zones. And so we're monitoring this going forward as we've been more active in the recent months, and with the rides going up, this is just an ongoing monitoring to see what extremes we need to do and how we consistently move vehicles across the zones. DeAndre, next. As you can see with the utilization, our goal when we launched this pilot was to provide 2 rides per hour, and we continue to meet that. Pontiac is month after month about 3 rides per hour, while almost every other zone is meeting the 2 rides per hour goal that we had set forth. DeAndre, next slide. The ride rating has remained consistent even with the increase in rides. And as the next slide is going to show kind of what the satisfaction is, we really do believe that as we have more hours claimed, more shifts claimed, we're bringing more operators in, that's what kept the service levels appropriate and kept riders who are using the service and satisfied with it to that level. DeAndre, next slide. So next, I did want to show a quick slide on what the top rationale is for the ratings for riders. Comfortable ride. And so as we've been putting new vehicles out there, you know, it's a comfortable ride, working air conditioning in the summer. They're able to fit in the vehicle comfortably. Smooth routing, so easy transitions, easy booking. A quick pickup. So as we saw the average wait time, although at 23 minutes is still an appropriate time that people are willing to wait. And a lot of driver satisfaction. Drivers have been engaging and caring about the riders and showing just their commitment to the service. We have learned a lot during these past few months by doing more driver town halls and engaging the drivers and learning more about the rider patterns and what riders look for in the service, but more importantly, what the drivers look for. Why, what brings them to work every day with the Flex program. Next slide, Andrew. So next thing I did want to touch on is a few months ago, the board was gracious enough to approve an increase in WAVE vehicles. I did want to touch back on that and show where that progress is. So we'll start with WAVE driver training. Our commitment has been to have all driver partners with VIA go through WAVE training to ensure that they can all handle and provide WAVE equipped service. And so you see at the end of April, we had 68 driver partners that completed the training. You see that to date, we have 69. Now that doesn't kind of make sense, but what we've learned was through driver attrition and more onboardings, that's why the numbers have kind of not continued to the level we want, but that VIA does have training scheduled August and going forward to provide more WAVE trainings. As far as the updates, the vehicle update goes, right now we have 20 WAVE vehicles in the Flex fleet, and they have a plan to bring 10 more on in the next month and a half, which would bring the number to 30. And I think our ultimate goal is to have 32 vehicles in service or available to the service. And so the last thing I did want to show was we did a recent rider survey, and we got some feedback from riders on why they like the service. And so if you go move to the next slide, some of that feedback is captured here. And so with that, I will entertain any questions that Madam Chair, you or the board may have.
Thank you very much, Danny. I have a question. How many, and I will say anecdotally, and you can't do anything anecdotally, but it's amazing how many people have commented to me recently about the increased number of Flex vehicles they see on the road. How many people are Flex riders and fixed route riders? Is there overlap or are there different audiences?
There is overlap. Yeah, we do provide a lot of first last mile service for riders in the Flex zones, as well as a lot of movement within the zone itself.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Well, thanks again. Very, very helpful. Nice report. Okay, so we'll move on to new business. Item number A, I'll take a motion for a resolution on the SMART fiscal year 2023 5310 plan.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Support. It's been moved and supported. And so, Ms. Lloyd, you're gonna tell us more about 5310?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Staff is recommending board approval of the resolution authorizing the fiscal year 2022 and 2023 5310 program of projects. SMART applies on behalf of its subrecipients for FTA section 5310 funding annually. 5310, for those that may not know, are programs that directly benefit older adults and persons with disabilities. The FTA requires a program of projects be submitted with the 5310 grant application. This program includes capital, mobility management, and operating projects that were approved during a recent RTA 5310 call for projects. An FTA section 5310 total of $6,289,128 is included in SMART's program of projects. I'm available for questions.
I have a question. Will the new maps on the urbanized area have any effect on some of the funding?
I think it does affect the amount that comes into the area totally. But we don't know exactly what that change will be, but yes, it will affect that going down the road.
I've seen the draft maps for Monroe County, which are being offered by SimCog right now. particularly I was concerned about the Bedford area, and I do see I think a decrease in the urbanized area there. And I was looking at the funding, the pass-through, which was around $42,000. I'm just concerned that, the amount of dollars might decrease for some of these programs.
I do know FTA is working with with Congress to increase the total amount of money that goes into 5310. So it would help to cushion some of those reductions.
Yeah, super. Good.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is approved. Moving on to item number B, we'll take a motion to approve a resolution on MDOT's 5-year vehicle accessibility plan.
So moved.
It's been moved and supported. Mr. Whitehouse?
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm here today again on behalf of SMART staff, requesting that the board approve SMART to submit a 5-year vehicle accessibility plan as required by MDOT. SMART submits a yearly vehicle accessibility plan which describes the demand and response services provided by SMART directly, as well as the community partnership programs. The 5-year plan, which is required by MDOT, provides greater depth of information on many topics, including services, fares, as well as service areas for all those providers. SMART recently had their 5-year plan reviewed by the SMART Advisory Council in June, which followed the same process that is completed with the yearly vehicle accessibility report. I'm available to answer any questions about the report or the submittal.
Are there any questions? And this is a list of the local advisory commission individuals, right, attached to this?
That's correct, yes.
Seeing no questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution is approved. Item number C, I'll take a motion on a resolution for SaaS management software training and consultant services agreement.
So moved.
Been moved and supported. Mr. Evans?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Board. Staff recommends board approval for the resolution authorizing the software as a service management, consulting, training, and software agreement at a cost not to exceed $279,350 for a 5-year contract. This contract is funded by a state of Michigan grant. SMART is in need of IT management, consulting, training, and software to assist with the management of its technology support for a 5-year period. The solution is a software as a service platform with a mobile app that will help to support 300+ users with 12 agents. I'm here to answer any questions.
So is this a new software solution?
Yes, it is.
So we have, this is the first time we've used this. And I'm sorry, will you just tell me exactly what it's for?
Is to put it in more layman's terms, is help desk software to allow staff to be able to submit requests and we can track it. And then we'll also assist with management of their local device, meaning their laptops, wherever they are, catch it to the internet. We can work with them, track it, support it, and be able to access it.
Okay, no further questions here. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And this resolution is approved. Item number D, I'll take a motion on a resolution authorizing to award a contract for outside legal services for 5 legal practice areas.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Sean? Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the board. Staff recommends board approval of the resolution authorizing contracts to the multiple bidders listed in the agenda for the 5 different practice areas for RFP 233785 for outside legal services. The term of these contracts shall be 3 years with 2 additional 1-year options that may be exercised at SMART's sole discretion. The 5 practice areas include general and vehicle liability, general corporate practice, workers' compensation, labor and employment, and finally matters related to 49 USC 5333B, which is also known as Section 13C of the Federal Transit Act. RFP 233785 was advertised and posted on the Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network. A total of 12 proposals were submitted. 10 of those 12 proposals were deemed to be responsive and were therefore evaluated by the selection committee. The firms deemed to be most advantageous to SMART are recommended and are listed in the table in the agenda. These contracts are paid from the authority's general fund, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have for me.
Thank you. So are these law firms that we have on a roster that we would utilize at a need-be basis?
Yes, it'd be as needed, yes.
And then selecting them based on their area of expertise.
Selected
under
based on
each of these areas.
Yeah,
Those
under
available.
the 5 different practice areas. Depending on the issue, if it falls within one of those 5 practice areas, we'd select from the list below if you have a look at that agenda there.
And it's, when was the last time we went out for a bid on?
2018.
I don't have any further questions. Any other questions from my colleagues?
Could you just refresh my mind on matters related to 49 USC? Not being an attorney, but it seemed to be kind of something I hadn't remembered before, and what that an example might be.
Is that the 13C provision?
This is the 13C provision, yes.
That's for labor specifically. There's a provision that you can go into the technical details, but every transit system has to have a lawyer like this on board because of the 13C provision as it relates to collective bargaining.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And the resolution is approved. Item number E, a motion on a resolution authorizing to award a contract for circuit board repair.
So moved.
Support. Been moved. Yes, by Al and supported by JP. Thank you. So Mr. Burt, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. SMART's Board of Directors, General Manager Farrell, Deputy General Manager Gunter, SMART staff, and participating members of the public. It is a recommendation that the board adopts the attached resolution authorizing the award of a contract for circuit board repair to the Janet Corporation. This is a 3-year contract with 2 1-year renewal options at a cost not to exceed $150,000. Any questions?
Where are these circuit boards at?
These circuit boards are actually on the bus.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
These are like, you know, how you get an alternator rebuilt or something. That's what this is.
This is for the refurbishing of circuit boards that we use on multiple systems on the buses.
Is there some reason we had to go to New Jersey to get this? I'm just curious that somebody in Michigan might have bid on this.
Actually, I believe this was the sole. Yep, this is the incumbent for the past 2 contracts.
Okay.
Actually been with SMART almost close to 15 years.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution is approved. Item number F, take a motion to on a resolution authorizing to award a contract for painting and power washing services.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Support.
It is a recommendation that the board adopts the attached resolution authorizing a award to contract for painting and power washing services to Decimo LLC located at 16870 Schaefer, Detroit, Michigan. This is a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options at a total cost of $400,000. Any questions?
Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the resolution is approved. I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
Support.
It's supported. Do we take a vote?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Chairperson, Chairwoman Hillary Chambers.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Ethel Hattis,
Yes.
Mr. Royce Manica.
Yes.
John Paul Rea.
Yes.
Ms. Vicky Wilbur.
Yes.
Three passes.